ecosystem doesn't work in silos, as we all know, and neither do the answers to the questions that we'll be asking today. So thank you all for coming today. And before we dig into it, I do want to take a moment for a land acknowledgement. So we're currently sitting on the traditional, treaty, and ancestral territory of many Indigenous nations, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat peoples. And this land is covered by Treaty 13. And we wanted to make this acknowledgement because tonight we're talking about food, land, and sustainability. And these conversations are incomplete without acknowledging that the land we're gathering today and the agriculture systems many of us work with have roots of a history of displacement. So who are we? Who's Carbonhound? I hope you all have a rough idea of who we are and hence why you're here today. But if you don't, a really quick recap. So we help businesses with tracking, collecting, and also turning their carbon emissions into practical intelligence. So the kind that drives real decisions around, dealing with supply chain risk, resilience, and also long-term business values. And we built the company believing that sustainability and business performance are not in tension. And in order to prove that, we believe we just need to bring the right people in the room, and that's why we have all of you here today. So we're first going to start with a little fireside chat with Sanders, our CEO, and Andy from Goodleaf Farms. So I'm going to hand over to Sanders to start the chat.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. We really appreciate it. And welcome, Andy. Andy, I feel like I'm going to date you. How many years of experience?
Too many. I think on the thing it said I have at least 15. So we'll go with that.
Go with that. Could be 15, could be 20. Who knows? And you had spent some time at Mars, at Trust, and now at Goodleaf, right?
Correct. Yeah. Instacart as well along the way. So
that's right.
A little tech in there as well.
Have to mix it in now. And look, it's really nice to have you here. I think I was actually trained as a salesperson as well. So just a couple of sales guys. We're going to have to make sure we keep to our 15 minutes because you know what that's like.
I was warned.
And look, the reason why we want to bring you here today is because it's really important to tie the work that we're doing on the sustainability side to actual outcomes for businesses, or else we can't scale and grow the sustainable practices that we want. And so where does the rubber meet the road? Well, it's on the sales side. So wanted to bring you to tell us a little bit about your journey, and would love to, start off by getting an understanding of, over your only 15 years of experience, what have you seen as it relates to across all these different businesses and these conversations that you're having with retailers? I'd love to hear what you've seen over the last 15 years in terms of the trends around sustainability and how those conversations have changed or shifted over the course of your career.
Yeah, sure. So I won't go into the whole resume, but quickly, it's Pepsi, a bunch of years at Mars, the M&M Snickers Mars, not the other Mars down the road. And then did a beverage startup, Instacart in tech, and then moved over to Goodleaf, which I'm super proud to be at, vertical farming business that we can dive into if we need to. So to answer your question, I mean, I've been dealing, most of my roles have been in sales, strategy, marketing, and I've been dealing with buyers, businesses in the retail space my entire career. And sustainability has really shifted over the years. So I think I'm young enough that it still was part of the conversation in my early days, but it was a little more of a checkbox, right? Like, what are you doing with some of your freight? Like, it was a very low level part of the conversation with category managers and buyers. And then, then it starts to become a little more important. And now at a company like Goodleaf, it's like part of the day-to-day conversation with all of our key contacts and buyers. I deal with Sobeys, with Joshua, and this is extremely top of mind and what drives decision making for what they want to actually put on their shelves.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How is and maybe use Goodleaf as an example, and if you could maybe contrast it in your previous experience, I'd be really curious to hear about what are the specific value drivers that you're seeing on the sustainability side that are changing the conversation for you.
Yeah, I think our space is unique and special in that way as well, right? So when you think about a brand like, again, like M&M's, right? There's such high consumer demand. A buyer almost doesn't have a choice. That it's got to kind of have to have it on their shelves, because if not, a consumer is going to go elsewhere to find it. So we're in a new business. Like a lot of people, if I sort of surveyed the room, you may have heard of Good Leaf, may not have. Once I show you the website, you'll probably be like, oh yeah, I've seen that on my local Sobeys, right? But that was a decision that these retailers had to make and actually had to bet on, right? So as part of these discussions, we talk about sustainability and affordability, and where do they kind of link up, right? And we are a bit more of a premium price to what we refer to as open field farms. And in our space of leafy greens and microgreens, a lot of that is coming from Mexico and California and coming all of this way, right? So twofold, right? So the buyers are looking for, how do I find a more sustainable path to the Canadian consumer, to have less miles traveled, to have fresher product, a more nutritious product that'll last longer in people's fridges from a shelf life perspective. And then aside from the sustainability conversation, I think it ties into it overall. Like, I'm not going to lie, we got a little bit of help just over a year ago with tariff talks and the 51st state talks, and Canadians are very reactive to that and are placing where they spend their share of wallet more towards Canadian run businesses, which has helped us and a lot of other Canadian companies. And that's how buyers are kind of making those decisions.
And so when you think about those kind of pressures, and that's created an opening for you, obviously. I know you recently did a bit of a marketing campaign with, I think it was Sobeys, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to get an understanding of how you go about educating the audience about the value of what you do at Good Leaf. Why should they pay that premium? What does it mean to buy Good Leaf? And how do you communicate that value to try to generate some opportunity, revenue from it effectively, and create that demand from a retail perspective as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think like our business is divided into two spaces. Sort of leafy greens that you kind of all understand, which lettuces that you make salad with, right? And then microgreens, which is, you consider those like sprouts, we have micro broccoli, micro arugula. Like that tour was focused on that, right? It helps the overall brand so people understand what Good Leaf is, but this is what we're staying up and not sleeping at night thinking about, is how do we educate, everyone in this room, everyone in the country, specifically about microgreens, but also about Good Leaf. And what comes with that is more density in the nutrition, because it's grown in a vertical farm and it's so close to home. Once people get in and try it, that's the game changer, right? Because they go in their fridge 2 weeks later and they're like, holy, this is still fresh, and how's that possible? And it tastes great.
And I'm not throwing out half my salad.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I am a Good Leaf customer. So
awesome. Yeah. And with that, you'll see in our packaging, once you, if you haven't already, we are really working on putting, especially for microgreens, all the different use cases, right? Because a lot of people think of that as fancy restaurant, little tiny garnish, right? Or maybe alfalfa sprouts they're still around back in the day, but I know we stopped buying them when my wife first got pregnant, because there's just tons of listeria and issues that come with some of that stuff. Still fantastic product. No offense if anyone's in that space, but yeah, our microgreens are pesticide free. They're a controlled environment. You can put them on eggs, sandwiches, and a smoothie, and the nutrition density is what people just love about it.
And so when you're thinking about getting that message out, what have you noticed in terms of the willingness of different supply chain partners to engage with you on spreading that message? Like, does Good Leaf see it as something that is their responsibility, that you need to get the story out? Or do you find that there's been a lot of willing partners to help share that?
I actually love that question, because I have to give so much credit to our retail partners, right? Sobeys was such an early kind of all-in partner with us, right? So Josh was here. We have someone named Yan, all the way up to Sobeys family members. Their CMO for this tour, when we sort of pitched the idea, she's like, sustainability is so important to us. We're in. That's their trailer. They're like, borrow our trailer, wrap it, use it, take it on your tour so we can educate people about this fantastic product. So without our retailers placing these bets with us, we wouldn't be where we are.
And when you are having those conversations with the retailers, like, I'm just curious, do you have any comparative products to you guys that maybe aren't as sustainable? And how do you're obviously competing against them for shelf space. So, where do you feel like you've been able to gain an edge, or do you feel like you have, because of the way that you go about growing your crops?
Yeah, it goes back to a little bit what I was saying earlier. I mean, just look at the fuel and freight to get product traditionally where it was coming from to supply Canadians to eat these kinds of foods. The other piece is like insurance claims, people getting sick, right? Pesticide use, all of that stuff goes away with good leaf and with vertical farming. So when the buyers see that, they're like, okay. And it helps them too, right? Because they're having to source through droughts and like weather things, and I feel bad for them. They're always like, oh my gosh, there was like not enough or too much rain, or there's a disease on this crop, and they're having to go to all these different places. And with us, with controlled environment agriculture, it's predictable, right? The predictable supply chain, it's local, it's pesticide free. So there's just like a long list of pluses.
And have you noticed recently, especially with all the geopolitical changes and the challenges that are coming from that that's become more of a story that you're able to tell, or how has that shifted?
Yeah, we haven't been screaming that as much as like Canadians are just reacting to it on their own, right? So we don't mean to be like taking advantage, because it's actually like we want to make sure that's sustainable, right? We don't want to just this spike and then it kind of, the news will go away at some point probably, and we don't want our sales and performance to decline. And what I love is it hasn't, right? Like we're surpassing what what our business was a year and a half ago when all that stuff first started. And our trial, once people try it again, like they typically don't go back.
Quality of the product. Okay, so we have to ask you the final question, which is, do you think that sustainable food can also be affordable food?
Yeah, it's a yes. The short answer is yes, right? The longer answer is vertical farming is expensive, right? Like we're in a building, it's high tech, right? It's like almost like a medical grade facility if you visualize what we're in. As opposed to greenhouses, we use lights, right? So there's electricity that we have to pay for. We use barely any water, barely any land mass, essentially no soil. So there's a lot of upside to saying we're local and close, but we do have some energy costs, and it costs more for us to make this than it does in a traditional open field. So you'll see that reflected in the retail prices on the shelf. And the whole shelf life thing to me is start to do that math on, hey, I spent $2 on this lettuce that went bad in 3 days, and I spent $5 on a good leaf lettuce that's still in my fridge 17 days later. I think the math starts to work from an affordability perspective there too.
So you have to start doing the salad math. That's my takeaway.
We'll have to get like calculators for people's fridges. Yeah.
Okay, exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Andy, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, pleasure.
Okay, so before we move to the next panel, we're gonna have from Chefing for Good to come join us here. So all the food that we've been enjoying today is climate friendly and tasty, and it's been catered by Chefing for Good, and just gonna have them introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Georgia. I can hang out over here too, I guess. If that's okay. Thank you. So the food today was prepared by Chef Miriam. She unfortunately just couldn't be here tonight, but she's an amazing, talented chef, as I'm sure you can all taste. She also very last minute told me that I have to speak to you all. And so while I was working in the kitchen, I was like, what am I going to say to you? And this story came to mind, and I want to share it with you all. A couple of years ago, I had left one job and I was looking for another job. And in Kitchen World, we do stages, which is basically like a on-the-job training shift, right? You get to see the company culture. They get to see how you work. It can be fun, daunting, whatever. And I did this stage at this fancy restaurant group, and noticed that all the staff were drinking from plastic water bottles and then throwing them in the garbage, and unpacking all their material and throwing it in the garbage. And I at the end of the interview or stage, I asked the executive chef, I was like, what's your sustainability practices here? Like, what does your company do? And he looked at me and he shrugged and he's like, what does it really matter? It's just a drop in the bucket. Like, we don't need a sustainability package. No one really cares. What difference does it make? And in that instant, and leading up to this moment as well, I was like, ooh, this company is not a company I want to work for. But it really just stuck with me because I think just a drop in a bucket is such an excuse to not do our part. A drop in the bucket can overflow a bucket, right? And I think that sometimes sustainability can be such a daunting, scary thing to take on, but small steps like maybe recycling or bringing in your own water bottle are great steps, and choosing plant-forward ingredients that Miriam has prepared for you, or using offal, so chicken liver mousse is a part of the animal that is often not eaten, are just great steps that we can actively be taking. They're not monumental or in the big grand scheme of it maybe, but it is a drop in the bucket and it does count. So yeah, there's a QR code on the wall here. Chef Miriam does amazing events around the city. I get to participate with them sometimes, which is great. And I really encourage all of you to follow us and follow along. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd love to invite our next panels to the stage. And while they're making their way, I wanted to kind of set the scene for everyone. So in this session, the premise that we'll be working with is, oh yes, there's a reason. Oh, could we, oh, Jennifer, yes. The processor. Amazing. So
we're all in order now. This makes my life a bit easier.
Yay! There's a reason. You'll see why. Yeah. So just to set the scene. So the premise that we're gonna be working with in this session is sustainability decisions are commercial decisions. So as you can see, we have the full food value chain here: a retailer, a manufacturer, a processor, and a grower. And we often tell ourselves a story that sustainability is the right thing to do. But what does that actually look like when commercial pressure kicks in, right? So 3 questions that we'll be pulling apart here. First is sustainability actually a cost center, or is that just something we decided to just make it be a thing? Second, who pays for sustainable food, and where's the pressure actually coming from? And last, what does shared responsibility across the supply chain actually look like in practice? So with those questions in mind, I'll hand it over to Sanders, our moderator, who is our resident foodie here. And I am as well, who I suspect has been losing sleep over these questions for a while. So let me hand it over to you, and the floor is yours.
I just want to eat well cheaply. I'm tired of making, I feel like I spend so much time growing my tomatoes and they're like $50 tomatoes by the time I'm done. There needs to be a better way, so I'm hoping you can help me. So first of all, thank you very much, everyone here. We had folks come from the US for this, so I appreciate that, Jennifer. It's okay. It does.
Thank you.
So first, I'm just going to kind of introduce everybody here. So starting with our lovely Joshua Goodman here. He's the head of corporate sustainability for Sobeys, which has 1,600 stores. That's kind of amazing. And he's been in former sustainability roles across CPG, financial services, real estate. And interestingly, he has an international law background. So he'll correct us if we're wrong, hopefully. Sriram, so he's the environmental sustainability manager at FGF Brands, which if you don't know the brands, they're Ace Bakery and Stonefire, probably 2 of the bigger ones, I would say. Yeah, great brands. And then he also has his MN from U of T, and he leads multiple energy and waste reduction initiatives across the bakery facilities. So thank you for joining us. Then we have Jennifer, the Senior VP of Safety, Quality, and Sustainability. I think they could have given you a couple more titles there. at Bay State Milling, which has been 30 years in the grain and milling industry. And you're a former cargo quality leader overseeing the Bay State, and you so we've got some alumnus here as well. And you oversaw the Bob's Red Mill collaboration and Bay State for So Naked Oats, which is a really cool product that hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about today. And last but not least is Dana. Thank you so much for coming. She's the Director of Market Development and Sustainability for Grain Farmers of Ontario. So she represents all the people who actually have their hands in the ground doing the hard work. So thank you so much for doing that. And you're the former North American Head of Sector for Consumer Goods and Agri-Food at the British Consulate General. Don't know why you came back.
Just down the street, actually.
And you bridge farmer economics with global market access. So thank you so much for coming. So you can see the order. So if you're ever wondering who represents what role, you just need to remember we're going from retail to farmer. So we're going to start this off really easily and hopefully in a fun way. So I'd love just to go through and ask you what your favorite baked good is and why. You don't look like you want to answer, so I'm going to start with Dana.
I can start. I'm wearing my croissant socks today. I do love croissants, but I'm gonna have to go with the humble cookie. And Buck from Ardent Mills knows why, and I'm sure Jennifer knows why. Our farmers in Ontario, we lead production of soft red winter wheat, which is the #1 cookie wheat in Canada. So it has been intentionally bred by investments from farmers and researchers and all parts of the value chain to bake a wheat variety that's going to make really good cookies that have great dimensional stability. They don't spread too much. They make nice crisp cookies, and it's really our specialty in Ontario. So that's why I would say the cookie.
It's a good answer.
Yeah.
My answer is going to be lackluster. I picked the sugar cookie because they taste good.
Mine would be very specific, a banana chocolate chip muffin. Yes.
Ooh, strong.
Yeah.
Very strong.
Sweet tooth, yeah.
I do not have a sweet tooth, but I have a sucker for a cinnamon.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
So thankfully, I try to moderate it to once a quarter. It's kind of like, like on my earnings call, and then I said, "Oh, I did well, but that's okay. We can go get a cinnamon."
After your leafy greens.
Yeah,
Yes.
put a little microgreen on top. Makes it all magic.
Oh yeah.
So just welcome. We have some folks joining virtually, so if you can use the microphones, so
We'll
everyone
get
can
better at
hear
this.
you.
So you guys can share this one over there, and then we'll share this one.
Try not to touch this.
We'll try not to touch it. Okay. Mine is I've gotten obsessed with cannelé recently, but they're impossible to find. And don't try making them, I swear. It involves beeswax, and that didn't end well for my kitchen. Okay, so in the first part here, we're going to talk about why does sustainability matter. I think when we talk about sustainability, we really need to figure out what those economic drivers are, because at least when we look at our customers, we find that these are the reasons why people start to take their first steps. And so start off with Joshua. I mean, you're probably the head of the snake here in many different ways, but you really, I think,
I have
Sobeys
a phobia
as a
of snakes, so that was triggering.
My co-founder actually has snakes, so it's not a negative thing in our business.
Gonna go to that side of the room later.
So I guess I wanted to ask you, when Sobeys asks about sustainability data, I'm assuming it's not coming from the warm cockles of your heart. Like there's some other commercial reason behind that. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about what the motivations are for Sobeys around why they feel like sustainability is important to their business.
So I think there's no singular reason why sustainability is important to a grocery retailer, or I think even to people. And that's an important message. If we think about sustainability just in terms of, well, it's good for the environment, we're creating a really micro audience. And I think what really reinforced that for me a while back was I listened to the daily, part of my dog walk routine. And one of the reporters, when the Trump administration came back into power and and sustainability or environmentalism and everything started to collapse and move in a different direction, she asked the question, what's really happened on the ground? And so she went to every state to look and see, what's the state of sustainability or environmental green energy initiatives in states. And what she found was super interesting, because in Texas, for example, geothermal is skyrocketing because it's cheap, affordable, reliable electricity. It's not about the environment. People who are buying it couldn't give two hoots about it. They're probably living right next to a place where they're pumping oil, and that's great. For them, it's about reliable, cheap electricity. So that's why they participate. So it's sustainable, but that's not their motivation. There was another example. It was in Montana, I believe, but if I'm wrong, if it's Wyoming, I apologize. I'm not trying to blend the states together, but they both have great skiing. So, there. But I believe it was in Montana. It was cattle ranchers who were supporting the preservation of rivers and the ecosystems within rivers, because they found their cattle were stronger. Their cattle lived longer because the water was cleaner. They didn't care, again, about the environmentalism of it. It was about the resilience of their business, their livelihood. So I think we always have to ask that question, because sustainability could mean for somebody just high quality products, high quality greens that last a long time. They could be, it could be, in the case of seafood, lack of hormones or antibiotics in the production of it. A lot of even organic salmon farming involves antibiotics, can involve hormones. So people are looking for that certainty. Seafood is actually a great example. Sustainably certified seafood. We in Canada remember this from over a decade ago, when news stories broke that the fish you're eating might not be the fish you're eating. You think you're eating. So there's that certainty that you're eating salmon when you went to buy salmon, not some white fish that was dyed pink and had a salmon label put on top of it. And I think that's really important. So going to your question about data, data is the foundation of everything. If we're going to tell a story about a product, we have to back up that story. Yes, we have greenwashing rules in Canada now, so that's really made it more important. The US has had the Green Guide for many years. I worked in the toy business before. I learned the Green Guide backwards and forwards because that was our biggest market, so we made sure everything aligned to that. But that's not the main reason. You're going to, as a company, you're going to tell the story. You're not worried just about greenwashing, but it's about your brand trust. So if you tell a story that isn't true and it comes out not to be true, well, you're going to lose the trust of your customers. Data is the foundation of all of that. So for us, it's not about checking a box.
So, when we speak of it as that premium product, I think we do a disservice to speak. To get an understanding of how, where you see sustainability as part of the strategy for your business, and where you're seeing pressure from to execute.
That's the point I would say it's coming from multiple angles. You have your regulatory side, you have your internal leadership, and most importantly, customers. Whenever there's an ask from the customers, there's an immediate visibility to it, and the leadership gives the right support for us to work on it. And that's where I feel like it's really important to have that customer pressure. It should be constant, and that's when it will help build the dialogue of sustainability in the organization constantly. Recently, however, we are seeing an increase in the regulatory side, I would say, especially with the introduction of EPR. And I believe most of you might know there is extended producer responsibility. For those who don't know, as manufacturers or brand owners, importers, we are responsible for paying for the end of life management of the plastic or the packaging that we're introducing into states or provinces. So right now we are having a business case to work on eco packaging projects, and right now we're able to say justify the cost for those projects. So I feel like that pressure point is really important. Yeah.
Okay, man.
All right. So from a strategy perspective,
Yeah, where do you see where do you see the pressure from sustainability come from? There's lots of different stakeholders it could come from, but I'm just curious as to what you're seeing in your business.
yeah. So our organization is a 126-year-old family-owned business out of the Boston area. Everything we produce comes out of the ground. So when my manager asked me to take on the role of sustainability, there's a lot of components to it. But it's some ingredients that you can't get anywhere else. You can't go to someone and ask them to plant it or grow it or make it. You can ask them to plant it, but there's a time delay in that. So we have to have that supply assurance with regenerative ag and or ROC partner. And they won't buy a single pound from you until they know that the product takes off, that you're going to be able to meet that growing demand. So we were out ahead building the supply long before we could maybe meet sales. I would agree that with other components, certainly there's a regulatory compliance that we are managing to, but I also try to take a positive spin. Like on California 261, it's about climate risk. So it's not just a check the box exercise. We really do have climate risks in all of our supply chain.
So how do we become more aware of them? How do we build them into our quarterly review process that we're planning? We are working with our customers to help them meet their SBTI targets. So building that customer loyalty and trust. We're working on projects that deliver operational savings at our 10 manufacturing facilities that we have in the US and Canada. And ultimately, we want to have a triple win. So we want our growers to be more profitable and have better land values. We want to make sure we have the products we need to grow our business and to be around for another 126 years. And we want our customers, we want to offer them differentiated products and services. And we believe sustainability is a way to do that. So my sales team has been a really big partner, even though it adds complexity into our business. They believe it's the right thing to do.
Very cool. And how are you seeing these trickle down to the growers?
Yeah, it's been interesting. So Grain Farmers of Ontario, we represent 28,000 farmers across the province. We're the largest commodity association in the province. Every farmer that is growing barley, corn, oats, wheat, or soybeans in this province is de facto a member of our organization, and we do work on their behalf. So it is the oats that are going into your oatmeal for breakfast at Quaker in Peterborough. It is the flour that's going into your bakery products at different mills across the province and FGF. It is the corn that's going into your whiskey down at Hiram Walker. It's the soybeans that are going into your tofu and your natto and your miso at specialty Japanese restaurants here in Toronto. What did I miss there? Corn, soy, barley. Oh, barley, less barley. It's definitely barley in your beer. It's also pot barley and milled barley. So when you go buy barley at the store, it's one of our smaller crops, but still important. So we represent a lot of different grains and we represent a lot of different farmers. We've had sustainability as part of our strategic objectives for a very long time. I've been with Grain Farmers of Ontario for 5 years now. Before my time, I think at least going back 10 years, we've had people in-house working on sustainability, which is very unique for a provincial grain association group. Not every group like ours across Canada has staff in-house like myself and Ibrahim, who's our specialist here, working dedicated on sustainability. One of the reasons we do is because we have very unique crops within Canada. So we're the largest producer of corn within Canada, which is Canada's third largest crop by volume. Most of you are probably surprised by that fact because when we think of field crops in Canada, we think of the prairies and western wheat and canola. Soy is Canada's third highest value crop in Canada. A lot of it gets exported to Asia now for tofu and miso natto. We're trying to bring some more of that back. We can't claim a big title for wheat. We only grow about 8% of Canada's wheat, but I mentioned we lead in soft wheat and winter wheat, which is actually, in my view, one of the most sustainable types of wheat because if anyone knows about what a cover crop is, so the kind of crop you might integrate into a growing rotation that adds ground cover and nutrients throughout the season. Winter wheat is like a cover crop that you plant in the autumn, you harvest it in July, covers the ground, protects the soil, supports water infiltration, supports added nitrogen for the crop rotation, does all these wonderful things, but then you can harvest it and make money off of it. So farmers like that because you can't really do that with cover crops. So we've been investing in sustainability for a long time. I found it really interesting over my 5 years at Grain Farmers of Ontario to see sort of the curve of demands on sustainability. I'd say when I started 5 years ago, the message was, it's coming, we've got to be prepared, it's coming. And I think a lot of that goes back to the climate targets that people, set around the world. When I left British Consulate, the UK was hosting COP28, I think it was. And the UK government was trying to get Loblaws and others to sign up climate ambitions at that COP, to sign up to have 2030, 2050 targets. So I joined Grain Farmers of Ontario, and we have all these companies that are signing up to these targets, and they're looking at their carbon and they're saying, okay, we've done some work on scope 1 and scope 2, so what we can manage within our own operations. But scope 3, that's the hard one. That is everything within our supply chain. So all the farmers who supply the grains that go into the flour that goes into our cookies and bread, like how do we measure that? How do we look at that? And so it's been sort of this curve where they've been working towards setting up systems and data management to capture that and quantify it. And so I'd say, over the last year, we've seen a lot of those systems actually come into fruition. We've seen a lot of that infrastructure hit the ground. So I've started to see a lot more on-farm programs where people are trying to measure, monitor, verify. But then we've had this shift in global priorities, right? Trade wars, Trump in the US being anti anything that is, sort of in this space. And a lot of companies that produce and bake here and are exporting are really vulnerable right now. We've had food inflation. So to me, it feels like a tale of two universes on this. And I'd say on the farm side, I think what I'm seeing a lot of is people are trying to figure out how to get that data, how to get it right, how to reduce the uncertainty year over year. And that's the real challenge that I think we can talk about a bit more today. I won't use all the time right now, but a lot of it is we're not in a factory. We don't have a roof over the farm. if you measure emissions in one part of the field on one day within the growing season with one crop, it is going to be entirely different 2 weeks later or a year later. And it's not, this homogenous sort of data. And if anyone wants to get into this, you got to talk to Ibrahim because he's our PhD expert in this space, measuring emissions, soil science. He's brilliant. But I think what we're trying to do is figure out, okay, how do we eliminate this uncertainty with the data that everyone's trying to measure? And if you're going to be measuring stuff with junk data or data that's unreliable, it needs to be a carrot and not a stick for farmers. Farmers shouldn't be penalized and shouldn't carry the load of that uncertainty. So that's where I'll start. I have a lot more to say, as you know.
It's actually perfect because I'm coming right back to you. Because the next part of this conversation is about the business case around sustainability at each one of these different stages of the process. So, walk us through what that business case for sustainability looks like on the farm. And it'd be really cool to hear about maybe some programs that have worked or haven't worked, and how all of this downward pressure through the supply chain is kind of impacting the economics of farmers.
Sure. Yeah, so I think we hear a lot about more sustainable products or more sustainable farming, and I think our farmers would ask, well, what is your definition of sustainability, and is sustainability an endpoint? Is it an absolute, or is it a continuum or a process? And in a world where we have so much uncertainty around measuring outcomes, how do we know what sustainability is? So that's sort of the challenge. I would say there's a lot of the question of what it's sort of looking like on the farm. I'd say farmers in Canada and in Ontario have invested in sustainability on their own without incentives. Like if we're saying, oh, we should pay for sustainability. Well, I'd say a lot of folks have been getting a pretty good deal for many years, and things that you might want and might not realize are really sustainable. So in Ontario, we lead the country in cover cropping. Last Census of Agriculture, 27% of our farmers integrated a cover crop. Is that a good thing? Yes, maybe if the cover crops worked on those farms, but not every farm is going to work for a cover crop. Not every farmer is going to be set up to do a cover crop. Not every cover crop is going to sustain through the season. So again, it really depends on the farm situation, what makes sense on every individual farm. No-till, we hear a lot about Western Canada. They're not tilling. They're able to plant wheat without kind of disrupting the soil. That can be a really positive thing if you have high erosion and very arid soils. In the Ontario climate, where we have crops with really heavy residues that remain on the soils and add to our soil organic matter, and we have a really wet environment, and we have really short planting seasons for the crops that we grow that need long planting seasons, like corn, having a complete no-till system in this province might mean that your seeds don't emerge in the spring and you can't sustain a crop. So a farmer's got to kind of deal with those decisions. So I would say there's we like to put value on practices, and we want to put value on outcomes. The challenge is the practices aren't always feasible in every situation. They don't always have a perfect benefit for every single farm, and the outcomes aren't always easy to measure in a way that has certainty and is sort of like broad across the board that's going to have the same outcome for everyone. So we have these challenges in sort of measuring sustainability. What I would say has worked, I look at programs like the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative. They have a Regenerating Together framework that Ibrahim's been involved in, trying to help shape. That is really looking at context analysis for farmers. So the farmers that go into a program like that are going to do context of what are the sustainability risks on my farm? Is it erosion? Is it water contamination? Is it emissions, whatever it is, and they're going to decide what practices make the most sense for them. And they have sort of the flexibility to choose and adapt to their local regionality. So programs like that, I think, are ones that really are going to give the outcomes that we want, that are going to keep those farmers sustainable from an economic perspective, an environmental and a productivity perspective. And you can have some sort of measurable outcome, but when we're trying to just measure outcomes, from emissions perspective or regenerative agriculture or practice-based, it's a lot more complicated than I think we assume it is.
It always is. Which is really interesting because I think, Jennifer, you've obviously got, not obviously, you were a general manager before. And so thinking about the business case for sustainability, I'd love to hear your lens on that background.
Yeah, going through our strategy, first off, I have 33 years of quality assurance experience. So you have to have regulatory compliance. And there's big fees. If you're not complying with the laws, I mean, that law you're talking about, minimum 10 million Canadian, right?
Plus the reputational damage.
Plus all the reputation. So start with, you have to be compliant with all of the laws and regulations. And let's not forget, sustainability is not just environment, right? It's people, it's planet, and it's profit. So when we think about sustainability, it's how are we treating our people? And how are we making sure that we're developing them and that we're upgrading their skills so that they can take other positions? And we know that they have other places they can go. So how do we become an employer of choice? And increasingly, employees want to know that their values are aligned with what your organization is delivering. So you start with the social aspects of the people, how you're treating them, equity and wages, embracing and allowing people to bring their full self, their authentic self to work. From planetary, certainly there's, we mentioned some of the SEC rules or the, reporting guidelines, and cybersecurity. That's something that you might not necessarily think is part of sustainability, but one click, one attack can take your entire organization down. And now we have 700 employees, right? You could bankrupt an employer. So all of that is part of what we are considering and working on when we're looking at sustainability. So you move up to the next rung, which is customer engagement and building trust and loyalty. And I think in business, it's always about the relationship. And if you don't have trust, you really don't have a foundation to build anything else upon. And, you mentioned Cargill. Moving from Cargill to Bay State Million has been a natural transition because at Cargill, it was always our word is our bond. And we believe the same, right? We have to be truthful and honest, even if something's not in writing. Yep, that is what you told me. We're going to stand behind it, right? So all of that is true. And our customers have initiatives. Maybe they've made an SBTI target, and we need to help them. We need to help fulfill that. We're also working with customers, and I'm looking at Shanali from Riverside. We're doing some amazing collaboration that has been really beneficial to Bay State Milling because it's led to a whole new product line. So we supply organic and conventional products in the US and Canada, but we partnered with the Canadian oak growers, with Riverside and Nature's Path. And over the past 5 years, we've been able to help more than 30 growers become ROC certified. And we have created a market for those products. So coming out of Saskatchewan, that's a really feel good story, and that's a differentiated product. And you have different conversations when you're going to your customers, and you're being able to tell that supply chain story, and it fits with their values, fits with what they really, really believe in. So that's super cool, and we have some great customers. You move up to operational resilience, and folks, we have to run our plants as efficiently and as effectively with as much recycling and less waste as possible. So that's an ongoing focus, and we're just continuing to look at more and more things that we can do and take advantage of incentives. As I mentioned in my first response, key driver is we are facing temperatures that are going up. The Paris Accord was to go up 1.5 degrees. We're going to blow past that. And if you look at what's going to happen to drought severe weather, storms, right? We have to have soil that can hold the crops, withstand that wind erosion or whatever is thrown at it. You're not going to prevent everything, but give it a much better chance. And it's really important to us. The growers are an absolutely critical stakeholder, and a relationship with the growers are super important. So the growers need to know we care and that we're invested in them and their success. And it's not about Bay State Milling winning and the growers not being successful. It's got to be that value share and that partnership, and taking a long-term approach to how we're going to go after our relationship. And then leading up to partnering with, providing those products which are sustained, differentiated, and can help our customers grow as well. And then again, going back to quality assurance, it's not just about what Bay State Milling is doing. Right? With quality, you're only as strong as your weakest point in the supply chain. So we have to be considering who are all those partners as we look up the supply chain, because all it takes is one partner that maybe is doing some unethical things with the treatment of people, or they're not taking care of the environment. And then again, why didn't we do something? Why weren't we aware of that? So
I'm curious, what's been the commercial impact of that new product that you've been developing, and how are you kind of seeing that as part of the growth of the business?
yeah, so we have a couple really innovative products. I'll talk about two. So one is we have a unique variety of oat that we call it hull-less, but actually when it grows, it is a very thin hull that when you go to harvest it, the hull falls off. And the protein in that oat is 40% higher than a traditional oat. So that nutrient density is super important, and you don't have to add anything. It's a single ingredient. So you go to Bob's Red Mill and you buy their high protein oat, right? It's a single ingredient, and it's packed with nutrition. The other ingredient that we have spent 2 decades working on is called Health Sense, and it is a non-GMO variety of wheat that has 10 times the amount of intrinsic and intact dietary fiber, and it tastes fantastic. So it is commercially available in a lot of products right now. You just don't know because they don't want people to know, who's using it, what that secret ingredient is. But folks, we started with 2 5-pound bags of seed in the like in 2015. And we had to grow the supply chain to where we've got 30% of our volume in redundancy. It's a big commitment.
That's a pretty rapid commercialization for products like that, actually. When you think of, you have to test it every season, right?
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And from a grower perspective, one of the things that we do is we're working with growers, we're paying a premium, and we need to make sure that we're helping you with what are the best practices. How do you grow this? How do we work together? Because we want you to optimize your profitability, and we get more product without having to contract more acres. So
Amazing story. Just goes to show how that sustainability story can really drive massive growth to your business and the innovation around that. All right, Sriram, how are you making the argument for sustainability at FGF?
I mean, Jennifer from the manufacturing side, she covered the whole ESG. So I would like to, talk about a program, basically, how we build the business case. So, most of our sites are zero waste certified, true zero waste certified. For those who don't know, it's a certification provided by an organization called True. And, there are certain programs that we need to meet, certain requirements we need to meet, which includes having 90% or more diversion for at least 12 months, having robust waste programs, basically building a culture of, zero waste in your facility. So initially when we started this program, it was more of, let's do it for a couple of sites. It was from the leadership internally. wanted to make the supply chain more sustainable. But a couple of things happened which built the business case for us to do it across our portfolio. First was that we geographically were placed, like entire Canadian or all of our sites are based in Ontario, actually in GTA. So we were able to work with a lot of amazing vendors. A lot of people were able to take our waste, and we started seeing that for most of the waste programs that we had, we started getting a lot of rebates, which we put back into the system, paying for the waste programs which requires cost. So basically building a self-funded kind of a system, working with these amazing vendors. And on the other side, you have your marketing side of it. From the marketing team, they're able to use it as a commercial differentiator. Basically, they're able to go attract customers, because we also produce for private labels. They're able to bring them in, let them know you're producing your products in a zero waste facility. So it becomes a business enabler. I feel like those 2 points are that's what's the business case for us, at least for this program. Yeah.
Very cool. And Joshua, how are you establishing KPIs for your sustainability initiatives at Sobeys?
So I think the business case comes down to and what we measure. So I agree with the comment about regulation. That was always the starting point. I think that's what we all dreamed of about 5 years ago. I think we all thought we were going to be, on executive teams, because there's going to be so much regulation. They're going to need us there. Here we go. And that's subsided. But I would say we're probably in a period now what we call regulatory purgatory. We can see it maybe coming, but maybe not. That said, there's still an opportunity from a regulatory perspective, and this is now put my international law hat on, of where we're fearful of regulation coming, to kind of self-regulate, to say, no, don't put regulation in place, because we're already doing a good job. We're doing the right thing. So maybe we don't need government stepping in here, because a lot of times when government does step in, they don't do it right, and it actually makes things a lot worse for everybody involved, despite their good intentions. So I think that's where we started. If the point about targets, like, I think the business case evolved into setting these bold, ambitious targets, which was great. It helped drive things, and it's wonderful that you work to support your partners with that. But that also kind of subsided. You didn't want to be left out at a time, but then companies realized, well, we made this bold, ambitious target and we didn't know how to actually do anything about it. And then they started not moving in the right direction and falling behind. We're ahead of our trajectory for our Scope 1 and 2 emission targets. So I get to pick on people from that perspective. For now, we are. But they didn't really get much backlash for it. The first couple that walked things back, maybe there was a little noise, but it lasted a day or two. And so that kind of ended that business case. When you come to an executive team, say, we're falling behind on our target, but all we need is another $50 million and we'll hit it. And they go, but what's the consequence of it? Is it $50 million or more? If it's not, sorry. So we've had to rethink the business case. And I think it's been a good thing, because the goal of what I believe, sometimes not loved by my peers saying, but I think the goal of a good sustainability team is to be a valuable partner in the success of the business and driving the results. And the results are, at the end of the day, is just, in my business, higher sales, higher profit. That's what you want to do. So we focus on two things: cost reduction and additional sales. How can we help through programs? So programs that have wonderful environmental impacts, wonderful social impacts. As an example, we are, I like to say we're the leaders in food waste reduction, but let's say we're amongst the top in food waste reduction in Canada. That's fantastic, because last year, just alone, our partnership with Second Harvest provided 31 million meals across the country. That's incredible. Like, when you consider there are only 40 million people in the country, that's remarkable. And that doesn't even include our program in Quebec, which does excellent work as well. So that there's a good environmental impact. There's an incredible social story to there, but there's also a wonderful consequence too. We're avoiding sending food to landfill, which is a big cost to business. And the savings there, we're starting to measure those and demonstrate that by using these programs, this is what you're actually saving. So if you're a heartless person who thinks the world should burn, you're still going to want to participate in our program, because you're going to save money.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. I can work with anybody. On the flip side, looking at some of these products, whether they have a sustainably oriented products, however you want to define them, whether they have a premium or not, it's demonstrating, it could be, and I forgot to mention this at the beginning, I'm finding the biggest value propositions is, one, the reliability of products, because customers are fickle. They like to see the products on shelves. And if you don't have produce from here, or you have to source it elsewhere, your strawberries aren't as good, and they don't taste great when you have to source them from, let's say, Peru, and because they're picked and they're barely grown and they just kind of grow on the boat. Your customers start to say, oh, well, maybe I'll go somewhere else where they might have better strawberries. That's one of the things behind, a very similar company to Goodleaf. We work with, I hope I got it right, if Yum does the aforementioned Jan Bronco, our amazing sourcer for CEA produce. It's called, I think, Verity. It's a strawberry company in Quebec. One of my teammates has been to this facility. She attests they are the best strawberries she's ever eaten in her life. Even if they are in the top 25% of the strawberries you've eaten in your life, you can get them every single week at your store, and they will taste exactly the same every single time. And that's a huge value proposition to people, particularly people who have fickle palates, sensitive palates, like and we have an aquaculture salmon program with Sustainable Blue, amazing product that tastes exactly the same. And I have a fickle salmon eater in our house, but they like the taste of Sustainable Blue, so it's on the menu every week. So I think looking at that and how we can help by promoting these products, these good products, whether they have a premium or not, but because they tell a good story that you want to communicate to customers, not just buy this steak, buy this grass-fed steak. There is a narrative behind it. We can now start to count what's the incremental revenue. Like when we ran our Oceanwise campaign in our stores, what did we see a growth in sales because of it? Well, now we're helping the business again. So we're looking at those two. And I ask the team every time they bring a project forward, we have a big priorities document. Hopefully they're not watching because they're probably cursing me for making them do that. But one of the boxes to check is, does it have a cost saving or does it have an incremental revenue potential? And that's the way we're starting to look at it now, and being supportive to the business objectives so that we're not looked at as a cost center, which I think was in your opening statement.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, we're kind of moving into the last part of the session here. And given the fact that we've got this entire supply chain in front of us, where do you all see, this is kind of an open question, so the mic might fly around a little bit. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for collaboration to help improve the cost and sustainability of food amongst the supply chain? And obviously there's a context. I know what you're going to say.
I want to work with her.
So,
I have a very sensitive
would love to get an understanding of where you see those opportunities and what we could be doing more of to help get us to that mission.
Yes, I will start because I have a specific plug. Work with farmers, integrate farmers early in the discussion. I literally have a prop. So our team, we get approached every day by companies that are like, we want to build a sustainability program with your farmers. We want to measure X, Y, or Z. And we consult on these quite a bit. We give them advice and that sort of thing. So we actually distilled all of this advice into a very simple booklet, 10 principles for building a sustainability program that's going to be win-win for farmers and for customers. And I've got a few copies here today. You can also download it on our website, gfo.ca. But it's literally a guide to partnering with grain farmers for farm sustainability outcomes. So we want to be a partner. Farmers, I think you often feel like farmers are resistant, and it's because they feel a lot of pressure. And because farmers, at least in our sector, are primarily price takers, and there's a lot of demands on them already to grow a lot of food, to grow high quality food and meet the quality standards that everyone here expects, to grow it profitably and manage thin margins, and to do it sustainably. So if you look through this, it's all really straightforward, basic stuff. It's good governance, transparency in your in what your initiative is and what your goals are, being flexible, adapting to local conditions, taking care of farmer data, because cybersecurity is a concern and farmers are nervous about where their data is going to go and how it could be used. So if anyone wants one, please come approach me. I've got a few to hand out. Otherwise, you can check our website. But that for me this is collaboration in a booklet.
I love the fact that you got to the point. I'm so tired of talking to all these people. Just take the booklet, do the homework, and come back to me, please. All right, other opportunities.
I'm just gonna yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, and Dana. So the whole time you were giving your answer before about context matters with growers. And I thought you were going to say growers get irritated because somebody comes from an office and we're trying to tell you what's best for your farm. And that's not true, right? We have to understand. I recently went to Idaho. I didn't realize that Idaho Falls is a desert, right? All of that grain is irrigated, right? So I wouldn't have necessarily. So you have to engage. One of the questions you had asked in the pre-read was, how do we help people that really want to get involved, but maybe they're small and they don't have a ton of resources? And even though our company has 700 people, I'm still a team of one. So one, I've really appreciated working with Carbonhound because you're economical, you're mission based, and you are taking advantage of the concierge service. So under only no, it's thank you. So we need to share when there's good suppliers that are providing good services at a value. What I love about sustainability is we're here because we believe it's important. We believe it's the right thing to do. So I'm not afraid to ask people questions or approach people or make connections. And so when I think about what would be the biggest collaboration opportunity for me, one, I dream of a day when all of our acres that I'm buying are grown on regen ag. I'd like to take care of the farmer through all of the crop rotations. So I can come in and I can buy oats, I can buy wheat, but you've got other crops. So who are the buyers of those other crops so that we can go to a grower and say, we want you to grow your land, farm your land using the right agronomic practices that are going to be beneficial, and you're going to have a crop that you're going to get that return every time. You've got your own.
Okay. You don't have to go in order.
So I would say in terms of collaboration, I feel like, again, Jennifer and Diana, they covered it beautifully. I want to talk about mindset in general. Like, we need to have a mindset of, coming from manufacturing, I'm thinking about my suppliers and the customer side. But from the supplier side, what I'm thinking is we need to have a mindset of, supplier development and replacement. I feel like that's very key. When, educating the suppliers, collaborating with them instead of, in case they're not able to meet your sustainability standards, instead of moving away, you need to kind of collaborate with them, educate them. And that's when I feel like it'll be very effective.
Very cool. Anything to add?
I think one area is we can partner with good producers on private label offerings. That has lower cost inputs into it because it just gets to our shelves a lot quicker with one less hand in the middle, or maybe multiple hands in there. So that's always a good way for a good opportunity. It doesn't work in every case, but a good way of just lowering the cost point. In some cases, we have examples where our sustainable offering is actually either on par with prices of a national brand's conventional offering, or sometimes even lower. So it's very competitive. I think that's always a good way to do it. And the other way is, and I think what we try to do is, really empower those small suppliers, the Good Leafs of the world, I'm blanking, the strawberry company. I remembered the name and then I got it wrong. But the many local producers, and give them that opportunity to scale nationally. It's not going to completely change the price calculation in there. The inputs are the inputs, and especially now with energy prices where they are, that's a reality and a high driver of costs for a business and for a producer. But there can be reductions when you're able to scale nationally and have a bigger market. You can find efficiencies in your operation, and we try to do that every year. We move hundreds of suppliers from being just regional local suppliers who came in through our local supplier program to national suppliers. And I think that's where our opportunity is to take those good products and give them a national market.
Okay, so we have to finish off on this question. Can sustainable food also be affordable?
I think it already is in some cases. It just depends on the product.
We'll go I want to hear from everyone on this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so, yes. But it also depends on, again, the product and where you are in your supply chain as well. It's about reducing the upstream squeeze, because even a smaller data retrieve, let's say, when our customers are asking us, we're able to do it easily. We have the right team to do it. But as you go up the supply chain, it gets difficult for them. They don't have the resource to do it. So the suppliers are then not considered sustainable, right? So I feel like it's about reducing that upstream squeeze. And we do have the supply chain to do it. It's about the first person to move the needle because it's kind of a standoff if you think about it. Manufacturers want customers to give you a proper demand signal. Farmers are waiting for manufacturers to absorb the cost. So it's about breaking that standoff, and for whoever comes first in the supply chain and moves the needle and pulls the entire supply chain with them, I feel like then it becomes more sustainable. And definitely there's an opportunity, but someone has to take that effort first. Yeah.
Final words from you, Jennifer, for you.
I would just say that it becomes a responsibility. And if you look at Bay State Milling's mission, we believe in providing healthy, affordable products to the consumer. So it's on us to make it happen, right? Create the vision. So I do firmly believe we can do it, but we've got to be conscientious and we need to be smart about how we go after it. But we're all empowered to make it happen.
I would say it really depends. I think when I think of agriculture, and this is my second panel today, I was on one about food security earlier. And the thing that was running through my mind in that is when one of the real times when we see shocks in the cost of food is when supply shrinks significantly. So if our 28,000 small family farmers or big, small, medium, and big, if they start going out of business, if they start consolidating because the costs and the pressure that are put on them are too high, or they aren't able to deal with all of the demands or over-regulation, and they go to business, then that can absolutely raise the cost of food. And that is when you really get into trouble. There's a great example going back to my UK days from the UK pork industry. And if you want to look up, there's an article from The Guardian on this that is really interesting. In the 90s, they put world-leading animal welfare standards on their pork farming industry, which is a good thing, right? Like really good to have high standards, but they kind of shot above the standards that everyone else in the world was going towards. And they regulated it, and the big five, retailers in the UK said, don't worry, British pork farmers, we will always buy British pork. It's going to be the most sustainable in the world. And the UK government said, we're going to make sure every trade agreement that we sign with every other country in the world is not going to let unsustainable or, low animal welfare pork come in, and we're going to make sure we get your pork into markets around the world. It didn't quite work out that way. It became really costly to raise pork in the UK. And they went from having full self-sufficiency in pork production back in the 90s to today only being 40% self-sufficient in pork production because it got really expensive. The farmers started selling off, consolidating. British pork became a small industry, and it was the highest cost of production pork in all of Europe. So where are they at today? They're importing pork from Denmark that doesn't have the same standards. And that industry is half the size of what it was. So I'm not saying that's the case every time, but that can be the implications when you try to go too far too fast in an industry like farming that moves kind of slowly, right? We think in seasons, we think in lifetimes. A farmer's got like 40 seasons to get it right in their lifetime. So I would say you have to just be really careful about what we expect of farmers and think about their cost of production, make sure that we're paying for sustainability, we're investing in farmers to take risks on things, because if it's good for the farm, it's good for sustainability, it's good for agronomy, they will have already done it. They will have already invested in it. If they haven't done it yet, it's because they're unsure about it or there's a potential risk or uncertainty.
And that is why we have all four of these people here, because it's really important to get the views from every single side of the fence. And it's not a simple topic. It's a complicated topic, and it's okay for it to be complicated and messy, because it's actually a good reason for all of us to get together and work on the problem together. Because if it was easy, it would have already been done. And as Jennifer said, we've got the ability, we've got all the people in this room to make this happen, and we should do that. So thank you so much for everyone joining today. We really appreciate it. The books will be selling like hotcakes, especially at that price. So just everyone, feel free to stick around. We're gonna be here for a while. We're just gonna clear out some of the chairs and create a little space for everybody. We've got lots of great local products over here. Thank you to Kyrie's husband for coming in and being our bartender tonight. And we hope you enjoy all the wine and spirits and the lovely weather. Thank you so much. And lastly,
two announcements I want to make. We have a phone that's missing an owner.
No, that's me.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Great. Okay. Awesome. That's great. Second thing is, yeah, thanks so much for coming. And obviously now please go enjoy food, drinks, and continue mingling. To make the networking part a bit more, fun, we did label everyone with different sector. And we did put it on the wall there in case you forgot which one's which, because I did, even though I made it. So green is for service providers and consultants, blue is for retailers and distributors, red is for manufacturers and processors, purple for ecosystem and geo association partners, and yellow is for others. So yeah, please hunt each other down, have a great conversation. And last
Find
thing
the others.
is, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our newsletter. We have a QR code at the front. Yeah, if you want to keep up with what we're doing and what's happening in the industry, that's the best way to just kind of keep up with all the news. So yeah, please subscribe, and we make really good content. Shout out to Raisa back there, who's in charge of the newsletter. And yeah, just have fun and please enjoy the food and drinks. Thanks so much.
Please help with the alcohol. Thank you. I like a spicy ending.
I try to be spicy. You said that you wanted it to be a little bit.
I know. I was like, how am I gonna wrap